Amen. Amen. All right, so we're starting a brand new 3-week series called The Gospel of, and the is going to be filled in every single week with a different idea. That's something that we actually see a lot around us, and that's kind of in the atmosphere. It's in the air, but we don't always know if we can quite describe it or quite identify it. So let me ask you, how many people have ever heard this word gospel before? You've heard this word gospel before, and or maybe not always heard it associated with church, but like a gospel singer or, gospel shows. And we kind of use this word kind of with a lot of different direction. And here's the reality. The word simply means good news. That's what the word gospel means. It means good news. And sometimes we use it to describe Jesus. Like if I was going to, most of the time I ask like a Christian, what's the gospel? What's the good news? They'd be like, Jesus. And it's like, true, but more. There's a lot more to that. And that's one of the things that we're kind of talking about is, why is Jesus good news? What is the good news that Jesus brings us? And so I want you to do something incredibly dorky that probably only 4 or 5 of you will do right now. I want you to reach forward like this with your hands, and I want you to grab your thinking cap, and I just want you to kind of settle that on real quick. And me, I don't wear hats. I look like an idiot in a hat. I wore a hat the other day. I kind of came out of my wife's closet with a hat. It was a unisex hat. All right. It wasn't like hello ladies. I wasn't going to the Kentucky Derby, and I just was like seeing what my wife and daughter would say, and they both went, whoa. And I was like, right, I tried. It had been a decade. But I am a this hat guy. I'm this hat. Mason, I do not understand how you are a this hat guy, why is the point of wearing the hat if you're pushing the hair down? But again, I am not a great hat theologian, so the Lord bless you and keep you and let you form all of your own doctrine. So there you go. He wasn't here in the first service, so I have to both take out a lot of jokes and add some in now. And so the gospel, though, here's what I want you to talk about. I want you to think, because the gospel is not just Jesus, but it's why did Jesus need to come? Why were we all pointing towards Jesus? What did his birth mean? What did his life and teachings mean? What did his death mean? What did his resurrection mean? And then how do we live in response to that? See, when we say the gospel, the good news, it's not just Jesus, it's why Jesus is the key and the framework to understanding all of these things. It's a story, it's a whole framework that we use to see and shape and define our reality around us. It's how we view and process the world, how we make sense of it, how we find our place in the world. Again, not just that Jesus lived and died again, that's important, but why is that important? What came before it? What does it make possible? So over these next 3 weeks, what we're going to be doing is filling in the story of Jesus, of why he's important, but also kind of comparing it to stories that are told in our culture, in our histories, in our own lives, and actually asking, not would we use the term Christian to describe ourselves, but the actual life that we're living, does that line up with the whole life that Jesus has called us to live? What are the stories that we are actually living by, not the ones we'd say, but the ones we are actually living by, and how well do they line up according to the story Jesus has called us to live for? And is there a better story than the one that we are told in our cultures, in our media? Is there a better story? Yes, there is. That's why we're here. There is a better story. And so we're starting. First thing I want to do is I want to set a framework for you. Again, if you're taking notes, this is a really good note-taking week because it's every week is. It's a good note-taking week, and here's these 4 words, because while there is a lot of ways to define the gospel, you can write whole books and whole paragraphs and long sentences. I want to try to reduce it into something that is something you could write down, something you could remember, something you could take with you. And these are the 4 words you're going to hear a lot over the next 3 weeks: creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. Creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. Creation, where did we come from? How did we get here? Well, we're here. How is it that we got here? The fall, what went wrong? Because again, I don't think we're looking around at the world and going, great, keep all of it more. I don't think we all have something we think is off. And so whatever we think went wrong with the world, that's how we would describe the fall. Redemption, how do we fix it? So fall and redemption are almost always tied together, because what went wrong usually determines what you need to fix and how you need to be able to fix it. And then restoration. What is life like because we've actually started to follow this? What is life like and how should things be because of this restoration? Creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. This week, we're going to start with perhaps the most dangerous gospel. It's not really, just preachers like to be, really hyperbolic whenever they preach. When Pastor Mason preaches next week, he'd be like, this is the most dangerous gospel we're going to talk about this morning. So here's the most dangerous gospel, the gospel of me. And not like me, Clayton, but like me, you, like me-me's. There's a lot of me's. Me. Like there's a lot of, and here's why the gospel of me is so dangerous. Because it makes so much sense, and it has snuck its way into almost everything, including our churches, our Bible reading, and our Christianity. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard this story told? First, creation. I was made good. Did I come from God? Did I come from the universe? It doesn't really matter because I started off as good and right and true. Fall. Outside influencers have corrupted me. So the reason that things are not how they should be is because of all of these outside influences around me. People have imposed their way of thinking on me, and so it has distorted me, it has warped me, it has set me in a bad way. Now here's the problem. Again, we're going to explain this a little bit more. That might be true, but all we're talking about is these existing outside forces, and we never ask why those forces exist. So put a pin in that. We're going to come back to it. So it's my parents, my schools, my churches, my social media, celebrities, the government, any authority, any outside thing that is trying to tell me how to think has corrupted the true, good, right nature that I have inside of me. So the way to bring redemption into my life is I need to get back to my true self. I've got to throw off every outside influence and get back to myself. I've got to find my north. I've got to find my true self. I've got to get my groove back, Stella. Like you got to figure out, you got to get back to how you were. And the way it is to throw off everything. So any kind of form or structure or authority becomes evil. So if we have men in charge, then the patriarchy is bad. But let me tell you something, if we had women in charge, then the matriarchy would have been bad, except for we just haven't really ever had that other than Themyscira, which is a fictional place where Wonder Woman was from. So we go, so systems, well, I don't have to worry about systems being bad. No, systems can be bad and can be oppressive, and some of them do need to be changed. But again, we have to ask why those things are in existence. And once we've thrown off, who are we left with? Well, if in creation we believe I am good, right, pure, and true, and the only thing that has happened that's gone wrong is all of these outside influences have tried to change me and teach me and point me in different directions, then once I removed them from my life and I can finally get out from authority, I can finally get out from oppressive structures, I can finally throw off all of those archaic ways of thinking and morality views, then whatever I think will be right, because that's restoration. The restoration is I'll be able to live how I was made, to trust myself above all. I will finally be able to be happy and know that I am right in whatever I do, and I will show them how oppressive they were by living my best life now. I was made good. The things outside of me have broken me. And so once I remove and throw off and cast down and break the things that are oppressing me, I will finally be back to who I was called to be. Does this story sound familiar at all? Does this story sound like something that you might have heard or even shared or heard preached? And when I mean preached, I don't always mean from a pulpit. Everybody's got a megapixel pulpit these days. Or taught. You are the best. You are great. There is nothing wrong with you. Everything that you need is inside of you. You just have to throw off the shackles of them, whatever the them is, and then you will finally be free. And then you can follow your heart, you can chase your dream, you can live your truth, and we'll finally be able to be happily ever after once we throw off all of those things that are oppressive. And again, the danger is there are, in fact, many oppressive things, but why? Why do they exist? We only worry about trying to get rid of them and not cancel the source of them. We find ourselves in the same problem over and over again. So when I say everyone gets to follow their heart, everyone gets to chase their dreams, everyone gets to live your truth, we understand how completely contradictory that sounds, right? Because when we say just one thing, hey, be who you're called to be. You're exactly who God has made you to be. There's nothing wrong with you. You're like, nothing wrong with me? Nothing off about me at all? What about this horrendous addiction that I have? What about this proclivity towards sin? God made you just the way that you are. You're like, well, see, we try to be able to bring encouragement, and we're actually preaching because we try to reduce everything down to something that fits in a tweet, something that fits in an update. Not like the long Facebook status updates, but the one where you can still get the graphic behind it, when you're typing, you're like, this is gonna be a cool graphic background. Then you get so long that it's like, back to text. You're like, wah, wah. And we try to reduce everything down to be so short and so pithy and so memorable that what we do is we actually lose the robustness and the fullness of the truth and see how it actually fits into or the whole picture, or as we might say here at TNLC, to be able to see the whole board. When you're living that truth, does that truth actually work in a whole life perspective? Or is it just something you are saying in a particular moment to be able to justify a behavior or belief because you don't want to change and you want to be able to get away with it? It's real easy to believe in a gospel of me when you forget there's also a you. Because you've got your gospel of me and your gospel of me and your gospel of me and your gospel of me, and what happens when they all don't point in the same direction? When they all don't go in the same direction? Whose truth do we get to live when one's truth sounds like a lie to the other person? Boy, you're taking this live your truth thing a little too far, aren't you? Actually, the whole point of this series and the whole point of this message is I don't think you're taking the I want to live my own truth, I want to follow my heart far enough. Because if it's true and you're just like, look, just follow your heart. Well, if I go like this and I'm following my heart and I just walk straight the rest of the time, I end up here. I only went off that much. Let alone if your heart, I grew up white, middle class, in a 2-parent home, raised in a secular but Judeo-Christian ethic. So I followed my heart, and my heart took me this way. Now, what say if you were raised in China and you had never heard the gospel and you have no other understanding or anything? Or what if you were also raised white, middle class, in a 2-parent household, in a completely anti-Judaic Christian ethic, and you are just following your heart, and all of our following our hearts are going in all of these totally different directions? Has anybody ever used a compass? Ever out on the ocean driving a boat and just been like, land is that way. No, we just came from that way. No, I want land to be that way now. Were you getting back into a boat with that person? Please don't get into a boat with that person. Are you that person when it comes to your daily life? See, compasses only work because we all have the same north. That's the only time that they work. I want to find my own true north. It can't be true north and yours at the same time. It's called the Law of Non-Contradiction, for those of you who have had Philosophy 101 in college. The law of two things cannot be mutually exclusive and true at the exact same time. You cannot find your own true north. You cannot live your own truth for it to be a universal truth. See, instead, the compass that most of us use is like that one that Captain Jack Sparrow had in Pirates of the Caribbean, and it pointed him wherever he wanted to go. It pointed him towards the thing that his heart desired the most. And so you can plot a course to go towards the thing that you love the most, but you can't figure out where north and south and east and west is if north is changing. Thing that is the magnetic force of north is more powerful than the feelings and moment and position of the person using it. So you need something more powerful, more significant, more constant than anything that you might feel on your own. And so on your way then to the thing that you want, you have to do something. You have to take a trip. You have to make a choice. You have to have an interaction with a person where you do something to them or with them, and you might go, was that a good or a bad thing that I did to them? Well, if I'm only following my heart, those words don't apply. Now, the thing that I do is only measured by, did it get me to where I wanted to go? And so if it got me closer to the thing that I desired, then the action I took was a good action and I should take it. But what if I want to go towards an affair? Is it a good action? Is it an innocent conversation? Or was it flirtation? Well, my goal was to take whatever I wanted, so the action was a good action. Unless we're working off of an objective north. Are they a true thing? See, without an objective moral law, one that doesn't shift or change based on circumstances or positions or people, without a legitimate true north to be able to direct our moral compasses, then we can't ever actually settle on what is right or wrong or good or evil for everyone. There actually is no such thing as good and evil in a gospel of me. There is only helpful and unhelpful. There are only barriers and opportunities. There is no such thing as injustice. There is no such thing as pain. There is no such thing as discrimination. There is no such thing as trauma to somebody else. Everything is either an obstacle or an opportunity because I am following what I did, and if you got hurt on the way to it, I don't really care because it created more joy and love and enjoyment and pleasure seeking in what I wanted. So, yeah, I don't think you're taking the follow your truth far enough, because I think this is where it actually leads us. Without a true north, without a one who gives a moral law who is the same yesterday, today, and forever, I have no idea how you ever call something to be oppressive, to be radical injustice, economic injustice. Everything just simply becomes utilitarian. Does it get me what I want? Does that person get me what I want? Then they are helpful or unhelpful. But to call them good or bad is to be able to say that there is something that transcends my experience, that is bigger and more significant than who I am. There is no such thing as injustice without an objective moral law. No wrong, no bad, no evil. Your moral compass points you this way. My moral compass points me this way. Which one of us gets to be right? Well, it's usually the one who's the most powerful, right? It's the strongest one. So I'm going to take what I want. And if you're weaker than me, sorry. And I'm going to take as much as I can until Claudel gets involved. And then I pretty much am not going to be able to take anything else because he's V-strong. And now, see, we have pushed a view that comes from our science that we are bags of mathematical carbon, and there's nothing inherently right or wrong or good or evil about us. We are just these bags of carbon, and yet the same people who want to be able to be able to take away any kind of divine inspiration for the physical existence of humanity are also tending to be the ones who are pushing the most of the idea of social justice and stop oppressing people and be able to love and to care and to serve people. But did you know, can you think about, when we're talking about the two things being held together, that the person who thinks that someone has no physical intrinsic value for existing cannot also say we should care for the weak and the poor among us? Why would we care for them? They have no value. They're in the way. So the idea of a social and biological Darwinism to also be able to be present in a place that is trying to be able to champion the weak and those who cannot survive and those who are not strong and those who cannot help are actually contradictory, and we're trying to be able to live a non-contradictory life. So you tell me what your north is, and I'll tell you what my north is, and we'll see who's stronger. We'll see who can raise up an army faster. We'll see who can influence more people faster. This is exactly what's happening. We are, in a sense, trying to figure out who can build more influence. We are not asking what is true and what is right, but who gets to have more influence over it. And so we go for as much as, well, I get to park wherever I want to. Because, I mean, you've been in a parking lot where, like, there's a car backing out, and then there's, like, you both are there. And you're like, who gets the space? And that person has been there. But then the car backs out in a way to like set a pick, for you. And you kind of like grab the car and you're like, oh, in my spot. I mean, like, you're just like, and you're like, hey, that was his spot. You're like, no, it wasn't. We take what we want, and I wanted, and I got it. We can go all the way from there to, why can't I take from this store? It creates a thrill in me to steal and brings joy and excitement into my life. Why are you trying to be able to take away the thing that brings happiness to me? All the way to, why can I not take what I want from your body and your home if I desire it and I'm strong enough to take it? If I'm supposed to follow my truth, if I'm supposed to follow my north, why don't I get to take? And most of the time we respond with, well, we just know that's too far. Why do we know that's too far? What logical reason, what philosophical perspective could you possibly have for saying that is too far if you have also told someone to go for the thing that makes them happy? The reason is because there is something inside of you where you are made differently, because you are not, in fact, just a bag of carbon mathematical opportunities. That's the reason why you know that is quite wrong, that it is not the way to be able to treat people, that when there's something inside of us that we know, because I am not trying to follow a gospel of me, I am trying to follow a gospel of Jesus. We know it's too far, but there's no logic to it. There's no philosophical underpinning for it. We need something more solid if we are going to stake the literal formation of our society on this. And it's because there's another story. So where did we come? What is the creation story that we actually need to be? Creation. Then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, livestock, and all the wild animals on the earth, small animals that scurry along the ground. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created me. So our false gospel said, I was created good, but the true gospel says, I was created good by God. A much crucial framework right there. Humanity initially was created good, but in the image of God, not in the image of pleasure and enjoyment. Because the gospel of me says, I will form God into my image, and the gospel of he says, let me be more formed into his image and likeness. How many times have you ever heard somebody say, or maybe you said, I'm sure God is not concerned with that. I'm sure he has other things to be worried about. I'm sure he's not really concerned about this. Do you know every time you say something like that, you are forming him into your image of what God looks like, rather than him telling you what's important to him and what he's like and what he has time for, and what he has power for, and what he is concerned about. When we become the people in charge, we want to be the one who create in our image. So we try to create societies. We try to be able to create laws. We try to be able to do things in our image, rather than asking, how do we create ourselves and then our lives around us to be more conformed to the image and likeness of him? So creation, we were good, created by God in his image, but the fall. So the fall says, the false gospel of fall says it came from the outside. Genesis 3:6 says the woman was convinced. She saw the tree was beautiful, the fruit looked delicious, and she wanted. Came from the inside. She wanted the wisdom it would give her. So she took some fruit and ate it. Then she gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it too. And at that moment, their eyes were opened. Suddenly, they felt shame at their nakedness, so they sewed fig leaves together to cover themselves. The sin in the world and the sin in us does not just come because of decisions that we make. It's not just outside in. It came from our choices. It came from the inside. She wanted it. It was a desire. And it's our desire to be the ones deciding good and evil, to be right and wrong, to be God rather than to obey God, that creates the gospel of me rather than following the gospel of he. See, in Christian thought, we don't believe all the evil is out there. We believe it is out there because it has come in here first. It is our internal brokenness and sin and desires. That's the reason that we have all of these oppressive systems out there. See, the gospel of me says there's oppression out there, but doesn't say why is there oppression out there. The gospel of he says the reason that there are systems of oppression and injustice, the reason that people have been pushed down, the reason that people have been treated as property, the reason that all of those things have happened is because we have tried to be able to pull from ourselves. It's because it's inside of us. We have been broken at our core, and that's why we don't just need to change our behavior. We need to change our nature, and you can change what time your alarm gets set. You can pick whether you have apples or Doritos for lunch. To be able to change who you are on the inside requires something infinitely more supernatural than us. So that's different than I need to find a better, right, outside teacher, because no matter where I go, I am there. So I need to change me. One of my favorite posters is there's always like the motivational posters, and it was like, we can achieve, and it was like hands inside. And there was one that was a broken chain link fence, and it said, the only common denominator in all of your broken relationships is you. Meaning, you know who's been in all those broken relationships and all those failed jobs and everything? You. Have you dealt with that one? Here's a little post-Easter reminder. We are still crucified with Christ. We still no longer live. He lives in us. So that's the true creation, the true fall, and now the true redemption. See, if it was the outside that was the problem, you just remove the outside. But if it's the inside that is the actual fall, you need someone who deals with the inside. Galatians 2:20, Paul says, my old self has been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So now I live in this earthly body by trusting the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Pretty much puts a nail in the coffin or puts a nail on the cross of the gospel of me and the gospel of he being able to exist at the same time. I'm literally putting myself to an end so that I can be resurrected to new life. I'm recognizing that the problem is not out there. The problem is in here. I heard a pastor say one time he was on a flight and the guy was like, well, what's God's problem? There's so much evil in the world. What's God going to do about it? And he said, God does have a solution, and he wants to start in 14E. Will you get rid of the evil in your life first? And the guy did not want to get rid of the evil in his life first. He wanted everybody else to get rid of their evil first. And what happens when we actually live that way? See, Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 1, therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling, for you have been called by God. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. So we are now not to be the angrier people, the more aggressive people, the more protesting people, the more posting people. We are to be the more humble people. We are to be the more gentle people. We are to be the more understanding, the more gracious, the more loving, the more caring, the more concerning, the ones who take on the burden of others, the ones who give when they will not receive from others. That's what it looks like to be able to be remade from the inside out, is now you do start living differently on the way out. And now you are not, see, before when I said it made no sense to be able to live in a biological, social, and moral Darwinism and to be able to try to care for the poor, the widow, and the orphan, and the oppressed. These things are completely contradictory and make no logical, philosophical sense. But you know what does? To look at a person who everybody else thinks is human trash, and no matter how many carbon nanites and molecules are inside of them, so is the image of God. And they may be human. They may be the greatest bad decision machine you have ever met in your life, and the image of God is inside of them. So you don't give them worth because oppression is bad. You give them worth because oppression is bad, because God is a God of justice. God is a God of restoration. God is a God of hope. And so they get their value, and we love them not because of what they can contribute to society, not because of what they can contribute to our lives or to our churches or to our families. We give because they are made in the image of God, and I am not trying to find out what is utilitarian and what is helpful for society. I am trying to be able to be motivated by the fact that I was broken and sinful and lost and had just as much a chance of salvation on my own, which was -1,000,000. Then he saved me. He gave to me when I never could give to him. He gave to me more than I could ever get back. And so we don't invest in people, we don't help people, we don't serve people because they're going to be able to help us back, but because they are made in the image of God. And I'm telling you, that is the reason. Yeah, the church has warts. Yeah, the church as a whole has had some problems. Yeah, the church has not gotten it right over the years. But let me tell you something. You go try to find a place in the entire world in history where a hospital or an orphanage or any kind of women's rights or any kind of justice exists where the gospel has not gone first. Okay, yeah, we got our problems, but you want to come, I'll put it up against any other system of thought and any other perspective of way to be able to shape society, because at the very core, we do not see people as utilitarian, as cogs, as financial providing machines. We see them as divine beings made in the image of God with the potential for restoration, regeneration, hope, healing, and Jesus to be alive inside of them. And so that's why the gospel of me, that now you see that hopefully what you see is when you're like, live my truth. Actually up here, that's what's creating the oppression. That's what's creating all of the what's another bad word for oppression? Destruction. Injustice. Sorry, I was on a roll right. I couldn't think of the word. That's what creates the injustice. It's somebody going, hey, I want to own that person. Well, if they're just carbon-based life forms, what does it matter if we call them a slave or not a slave? What does it matter if we call them 3/5 of a person or not? What if we call them that they're a less of a gender? What does it matter if we take from them? What does it matter if we batter them? What does it matter if we do those things? They're just bags of carbon. And it's the people who believe in the gospel of He who say, no, there is something more important. There is something more primal. There is something more significant, something more presuppositional, because we are made in the image of God. And where we are is good, but not redeemed. See, then the danger becomes you go, see, I just love you where you are. Don't change. Stay where you are because God loves you. That's not a message of hope. Do you think the person bound in addiction, the person who is suffering from depression, just needs to be able to be told, like, you're fine just the way you are? They are dying to be able to change and to see anything. What can really change me? What can really transform me? What can really bring me hope? The gospel of Jesus Christ. who is not just going to adjust your behavior, who is not just going to get you to white knuckle everything and hold everything on. He is going to be able to bring you new from the inside out, because he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You move in mysterious ways. I move in mysterious ways. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so we can have real forgiveness. We can have real transformation, real power for our lives to be different, a real sense of justice, even if the best police force in the world perfectly mediates earthly justice, they're going to miss things because they're not reported, because people don't know what to do. And God is a God who never lets any of that go unpunished. So the things done to you in secret, the things that nobody knows, the things that you're wondering, will anybody ever be held account to it? You only get an answer to yes in that, and it's only important if we are made in the image of God. And he is there to be able to bring redemption and restoration into our lives. You can live in the gospel of me, but I'm going to choose to live in the gospel of he. I think he deserves more than to be reshaped over and over again into my whims, into my desires, into my momentary distractions and pleasures. I believe that I need to be shaped, and I want to spend the rest of my life being shaped by his restoration, by his redemption, to live that out in restoration. Ben, would you come up as we begin to transition to responsive worship and communion? So I want to choose to lay down the gospel of me so that I can believe in the gospel of he. That I can live a new story. I can live a new way of thinking. You know, it used to be when you got on the Suncoast Parkway, that's the most primary toll road that most of us probably drive on, right? It used to be the toll booth. You had to stop, find the last few coins in your entire car that you couldn't really find, and then you could go. But you had to stop. You had to slow down. Now it's all toll by plate, right? Now they got the RFID chips. You just buzz through it. I'm getting there for a reason, because what I hope that this message does is I want to build a toll booth of the gospel of he in your heart, mind, soul, and strength. The next time you go to say something, do you go, why am I saying this? Is it for my benefit or his? Am I proclaiming his truth or my truth? Why did I make that choice? Or are you just on autopilot? Can we slow down? Can we stop and think, whose kingdom does this build? Whose gospel does this proclaim? One for me or one for him? I'm praying, God, teach me to think differently. This might either be an encouragement or a discouragement. It'll probably take you the rest of your life to truly start working to think this way. But now you can start right now and see change. And you got to be willing to do it for the rest of your life as well. The older I get, the more I'm trying to constantly pray, God, will you show me how to think like you? Not let me continue how I already was, but how do I keep thinking like you? I want to pray for us. Ask that God would speak to us, and then we can move into a time of responding to him through communion and song. Father, we thank you for your love and your mercy, for your grace and your forgiveness. Father, I'm praying for those who know that they have not been following your gospel. They have been trying to chase themselves, but are ready to lay that down so that they can pick up their cross and fully be yours. If that's you this morning, I just want to ask that you would just pray with me under your breath. Just respond to him in this way. Just say, Jesus, here is my whole life. I belong to you now. I turn from my past, my choices, my old trusts, and I trust in you. Would you forgive me, lead me, and make me new? Teach me to follow you. As well, Father, I'm praying for those of us who would boldly proclaim that we belong to Jesus, but our thoughts and our actions and our words are on autopilot. and have intermingled and intermixed with our culture in ways that we have not discerned on purpose, but they've just happened. Teach us, show us, quicken our spirits to know that wasn't for God and that was for me, that we might move closer to you. In your name we pray.